Hello, everybody.
Hello.
We are Zooming it.
Sorry about last week. For some Cox decided to let their servers go down, so
Yeah, right in the middle of class. That happened to me. I'm on Cox too. So
I didn't realize it was Cox for like a good half an hour, and I reset my modem like 5 times, and I finally realized my TV was out and everything. I was like, oh.
yeah, it's the first time this whole time actually that they went out. So what are the chances, right?
And then it comes on like 15 minutes after class would have ended.
Yeah, it was weird,
So
but it's fine.
Fortunately, I guess it was specific to your guys' area because mine didn't go out.
Oh, really? Oh. Wait, what happened to Eric? Come back, Eric. All right, so oh, there he is. So let's move along because we're kind of behind. So the Treaty of Fort Laramie, as I said earlier, it was the treaty system had been a legacy of the first Henry Knox and George Washington. This is a borderlands theory. It's kind of antiquated, but I guess it's important because so the one of the reasons we have to understand about treaties is and White is he has this borderlands theory, but it's basically saying how in the beginning the United States and French and Native American tribes were equal in their power. So we often I think we fail to realize that there was a moment in time where the U.S. was young and could have not existed, ceased to exist. And so it's important to realize this was the beginning of American nationalism and propaganda because no one wanted to enlist. So we had 400 people, and I'll cover this more in the first portion of this course. But I'm just trying to tell you about the treaties. So the reason why the treaties were important back then is because the U.S. could have got their ass kicked, basically. So the treaties were strategic. So a lot of times they were just to stay out of war, not join the British. Almost all the Indian tribes joined the British during the Revolution, for example. So these are the treaties timeline. So the first treaty was in 1778, the Treaty of Delaware. This is considered the first treaty, and then the Congress formally ended treaties in 1871. So there's 94 years of treaties. So the treaties were a tool of war designed for trickery. So they're a weapon of war. Moving on, I'm going to go kind of fast. All right, euphemisms and euphemistic phrases from U.S. Okay, yeah. Treaters were cheaper. It's always important to realize that's what the government was after our land, and they figured it would be easier to buy it from us for pennies on the dollar. So that was one reason why they did that. Was it was like they said, oh well, we'll just make them poor, and then we'll buy their land for nothing. And that's exactly what they did. They made us poor. They put us on reservations, and then they threw scraps at us that we were obviously going to take because we were in poverty. The one different example is the Sioux, where they said, we don't want your money. The Black Hills is not for sale. So there's all this stuff. So how to trick an Indian. The other thing that I wanted to point out was with the treaty system, they couldn't read, and they didn't really tell them what was on it. So this is something Red Cloud said in 1870 in New York. He went to New York, and he said basically they would come out, you would sign a paper, you wouldn't know what was on it, you put your X on it, and then 10, 20, 30 years later, they say, oh, you signed this treaty to give us everything, and we're going to move you somewhere else, so on and so forth. Same old story. I showed you the X, right? So this is our treaty in this area, Treaty of San Isabel. There's a little X by each captain. So all this stuff is standard procedure. You know, if you know one treaty, you kind of know them all. That's how I looked at it. The other thing to think about that's important about the Treaty of Fort Laramie is the Northern Plateau Guarantee. So, or the Northern Plains, that's what you call them. But this is where the buffalo were, and they put a clause in there. And it's important to realize reservations were like concentration camps in the beginning. They were like internment camps. If you were to leave your reservation, you were considered hostile and you could be shot and killed. But the Treaty of Fort Laramie said you can go off your reservation as long as there's buffalo. And what they did, and this just shows how really evil this country has been. I can't think of a better word. To get around that clause, they massacred 60 million buffalo or bison. So 60 million, okay? So this is one of these photographs of a mountain of bison heads. And as you see this, I don't know how you couldn't think of just the Holocaust or Hitler or something. That's what this country to Native Americans is. You know, we are the Nazi party. And this is this photo is an example. And the only reason why they did this was to get rid of the Indians, to make us poor and put us on reservations and then call us lazy as if we were the ones that designed it. So how to create an empire, divide and conquer. So this was the point of the government the whole time, was to divide us. And it worked. It's actually working, and we're taking the bait as Native Americans. So the old divide and conquer thing is as old as empire itself. You know, the Greeks did it, the Romans did it, all the European powers did it through colonization. The Spanish did it in Mexico to take over Montezuma, Cortez, for example, on and on and on. The old divide and conquer. The British were probably the best at it. In large part. And what you do is you turn people on each other. You make my enemy, and my enemy is my friend, right? So that's what they've all been trying to do, was to divide the Great Sioux Nation. So the Great Sioux Nation was the size of Montana, I believe, something like that. So this is the original Sioux Nation in the original Treaty of Fort Laramie. There's like three of them. I get confused sometimes. But then I would just think of it like three. Then there's the orange one, right? That's the second, that's the Treaty of Fort Laramie we had read, 1868. And then in the red squares, you have a further diminishment into 6 reservations of the Lakota Sioux. And there's different names, and those are different bands of the Great Sioux Nation. So you'll have the Oglala Sioux, right? That's a band of the Sioux. So the Sioux is all of them, and within them there's different bands. So that gets confusing sometimes. I was actually confused for quite a while. So this is the old divide and conquer, right? Diminishing Sioux land. So here's the iterations we go through. The Great Sioux Nation, as we was in 1877, is actually kind of look bigger than that on the other slide, actually. And then the purple part in 1889 was lost for the railroad, right? The purple part cutting through. And then actually, you know, this is, if you look at the kind of spotted parts, that's the Allotment Act. And we're going to get to that. So the whole point, this is what it looks like now. So this is this is Standing Rock. Standing Rock. So this is what we're going to cover today, is the Dawes Act and the Allotment Act. And this is what it looks like today. So if you just go through the history of this, I don't know how you can't be horrified at what this country did to the Sioux. Certainly rivals what they did in California with the genocide, absolutely. And this is why so many people cover this. And it should be, the genocide of California should be equal, if not more, than this. It's the same story to some extent. Black Hills discovered in there's a Black Hills gold rush, just like in California. Whenever there's gold, there's death, right? So greed follows, death follows greed. The Black Hills are not for sale. I believe it's $1.5 billion sitting in a bank account, and Sue are saying, Black Hills are not for sale. And so, yeah, so I'm going kind of fast on purpose. Again, so this was the goal the whole time, was to eventually purchase what they couldn't in war. And a lot of this is because they act like they're Christian, right? So they can't just go out and slaughter and take stuff. So they do stuff just to make themselves feel better. So instead of just stealing it from someone, they say, I'll give you 50 cents an acre. So it's all just so they can make themselves feel better at the end of the day. And then don't forget the attorney fees, right? So when you do all these court cases, the attorney fees, well, just like in any settlement nowadays, they take half the money, right? So it's just a truly nefarious chapter in this country's history. And it gets worse. So stay tuned. All right. Yeah, go ahead, Luis.
The first slide talked about the borderlands theory. What was that?
So yeah, I'm going to throw stuff in there throughout the semester. It's basically White. That's his last name. He's a sociologist, and he talked about the borderlands theory. And it's just important to introduce as a concept, because it's this moment in time where, and people call bullshit on it sometimes. I think there's some truth in it. And it's that there was a moment in time where the French, the Native American tribes, and the English and the United States were all equal on parity. So it's important to realize policy in that paradigm. Like, that's why treaties made sense, because they did it for themselves to save money and save lives of their own men. So they didn't want to constantly go for war. So they always had a goal in mind, but the goal in mind didn't always need violence. It used deception, right? So treaties should be understood as a tool of deception. It was always meant to be broken, and it was always meant to get our land one way or the other, if not through war, then purchasing it pennies on the dollar. So the treaties, and this is what's hard with me sometimes being around natives a lot of times, is they say it all the time. They broke our treaties. And I want to tell them that was the point, right? So, and I want to tell them that, but I don't want to be a jerk, because at the end of the day, there's like so many people writing about this stuff, and I feel like they don't realize the whole point of the treaty was to break the damn thing. And so it's one of those things where I just like, I just want to like scream on the mountaintops, like, dude, that's the point. You know what I mean?
But one question. I know that the San Isabel 1853 treaty was never adopted, but still, you showed last week too, and you had it on there, that they made an X, but it wasn't everyone who was wasn't every Indian who signed that. When I watched the movie, I Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, it seemed like they were talking that everybody signed it. The chief had no more power than anybody else. So how do they decide who signs it to say, okay, now we have the Indian agreement?
Well, I mean, I think at the end of the day, the government didn't care who signed it. They didn't care. If a chief didn't show up, or for a good example is this. So San Isabel and Mesa Grande have a land dispute problem.
I know.
Mesa Grande, the chairman didn't show up. So San Isabel said, I'll take this piece of land and I'll give it to Mesa Grande later. Well, San Isabel, and this is by Julian, right? When you drive up to get apple pie, I just went up there this week and we got apples and apple pie. So if you ever go that way, this is what I'm talking about. So all the people on Mesa Grande built homes. Their main strip is on San Isabel land. And San Isabel never gave it back to them. So there's this huge land dispute. So that just goes to show you the government didn't care who was there. They had a deadline. They had shit to get done. And they didn't care who was there, who wasn't. They weren't going to wait for no one, right? So the whole treaty system, and again, you can go so much farther into it. They didn't allow women to sign, which in some tribes, like the Oneidas or something, you know, I believe, I could be wrong, but women run the whole thing. Like that's how typically it was run, and the leadership was matriarchal. And so there's so many things to problematic from a Native American perspective, and representation is probably the most lacking of all. Is that, and then you know, representation and the fact that couldn't read, we didn't know what was in them, and it's just like the whole treaties are just so. I mean, it's Native people, and we're so pissed about these treaties, you know, and it's never stops. And we're going to get to that when we go to Alcatraz and all these other things, and even Standing Rock. We'll never forget these treaties, and we'll never let anyone forget them, by the way, because what they were was, like I said, these were like our Nazis to us. You know, when you look at what they did and how they treated us, how they killed the buffalo, how they deceived us, how they took away our children and put us in boarding schools. I mean, it's not much different than the Nazis were. The only difference is we recognize the Nazis as evil and that they were wrong, and America will gloss over all these histories and act like it never happened. So in a way, we're going to talk about this in about 3 weeks. We're like the Japanese. So the Japanese do this too, where they cover up their colonial past and they cover up everything, and they change their textbooks, and there's two paths you can take as a country, and hopefully we will get this country on the right path and off, because we're on the wrong path and we've been on it for quite some time. But yeah, so you're going to need a lot of yoga for this class. So make sure you get on your Peloton, whatever you need to do, because you got to exercise these demons out of here. All right. So what we're going to do is more good news. Not really. Now we're going to talk about assimilation. So assimilation is the next direction we're going. Wait, is that sharing? Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So all right. So just a little. Hopefully, I want everyone to watch a movie before next class. It's, what is it? Yeah, just Google unspoken boarding schools. Unspoken boarding schools. It's only an hour. And if we have time in next class, we'll watch some of it. But yeah, I'm hoping you can watch it on your own, because probably next class I'm only going to watch half of it, so or less. So that's important. So we're going to really get to the real. To me, this is it even gets, like I said, it even gets worse. So my question is, from the readings, what is the Indian problem? Let me just.
They're there.
What's that?
You said they're there.
They're there?
They exist.
What's that?
I was being a little facetious. The fact that they exist.
Oh, yeah. All right. Yeah, that's simple.
Well, it was a bit of that, along with, I mean, what I got from the readings was that they were having trouble getting personal and societal momentum with the amount of handouts that were a mix of both showing up and supposed to show up and never showed up.
Wait, say that one more time.
They were having trouble getting societal momentum and personal momentum due to the amount of handouts that were both showing up and supposed to show up but never showed up.
But according to the reading, it's tribal organization and reservation.
Yeah, so I would say the Indian problem is, well, you said it, that we exist. The other one is that, yeah, we'll get to it. Anyone else? I don't want to, the slides are going to say it, so there's no reason for me to do it. So yeah, tribal organization, that's pretty much it. Okay, Indian structurals, so the social structure is the main problem, like literally like who we are, right? So who we are, and this word progress, right? And civilization. So progress is material. It's always materialistic, right? And civilization is always materialistic. So if you're a spiritual person, right, you're going to find you're going to be, I guess, or if you think spiritually, if you know the difference between materialism and spirituality and on, progress and civilization is not what we are. All of us are, and there's more important things, and so that's something that never really is to me, it's like, it's a no-brainer at times. So Merle Gates, he's this person, right, who really believed in assimilation. And he really, I mean, if you read that's why I really like this, his letter, like he believes this to the core, right? But he has the bias. So you have to start first believing we're uncivilized, right? First, so you start with a premise. We're uncivilized. We are, we don't have progress, right? So we're just stuck in the Stone Age. And so that's why they say the Stone Age man, right? Because they look at when they were in the Stone Age, right? So Native people, they are 5 steps behind us. And so what he does is, so this is what he believed in, right? And there's 5 main points. And it really comes down to like the core of, this is why, to me, I don't think you realize what an American is until you study Native Americans, because this is like revealing your cards, right? So by understanding this, we say, oh, this is what it is to be American. And this is what is not to be American. And one of those things is private property. So private property is at the core of who we are as a society. And you could say, oh, it was inevitable. It's like, okay, this is how it always was going to be, but not really. This was a choice. We choose to have private property or communal property as a society. And a lot of it is, cultural. And Native American people are different. We believe in communal property, and we still do. So in Verona, we don't own our plots of land. We own it all together. I have a 99-year lease, I guess, until I die, and then I'll sell it to another tribal member, but I really don't own it, right? And that's it's kind of a mixture of what colonization imposed upon us and of who we were before colonization. The current situation. The other thing is Christianity, right? So Christianity should probably be first. Is better than native religions. So my point is, you're starting from these premise as a fact. You don't even question them. And that's what I believe Americans are still doing, right? How often do we question private property versus communal property? How often do we question if our religion is better than everyone? Islam is a perfect example. In my day and age, Muslims were the enemy. No one even knew or opened a Quran or went to a Muslim, spoke with a imam, or we just assume it without even doing any homework, right? So that's what I would say. That's what I've done my whole life. I went to the San Diego Mosque. I went everywhere. I went to Buddhist temples. I don't take anything for granted as if my religion's the best or if I know the right way. And so that's, to me, is when education starts, is when you start from like you're a baby, clean your slate and learn anew. So that's one thing I would hope you take from this class, is to question everything. The other thing is this: Roman citizenship was better than native citizenship. Okay? Now, if you don't know Roman history, you don't know American history. It's very important for you to know Roman history. It's everything, because that's where we began, the Greco-Roman part of it. And here's what Roman citizenship is. Only a citizen of Rome benefits with received all the benefits. That's what Roman citizenship was at its core. It was to leave people out and have this exclusive club while you dominate and colonize those around you, right? So it's so much easier. I think the reason why I think it's important to study Rome instead of the U.S. is it's more simple. It's like, it's like all these variables are gone when you go back in time. So I would suggest definitely, dive a little deeper in Roman history if you haven't. And here's what they wanted. So land ownership. Roman citizens could only receive land ownership, right? Back to the land thing, right? So Merle Gates, he's right here. He was thousands of years old. So he could vote. Like the Roman citizen could vote. He could be elected to Senate, and he had full protection and rights according to Roman law. So in essence, Merle Gates is thousands of years old, right? his ideas, but they're just imposing it on us. The other one is farming was better than seasonal migration. Again, we just take this for granted, right? But if you study Kumeyaay 1, which I teach, you'll realize that seasonal migration was the way to be. We would work an average of 5 hours a day. We would travel through this whole county. We would exploit every possible resource. We would go from the ocean, we'd have lobster and shrimp. We'd go to the berries in the lagunas and on. It's just like, man. And we lived to 130, by the way. So a lot of that was because we were mobile, right? So that's the thing. Farming is a sedentary thing. There's so many things, and farming largely is bad for your dentition, right? It's a lot of these farming foods are high carbohydrates, which now we realize is not good. Everyone wants the paleo diet. We had it before, but we got rid of it in this. So that's what I'm trying to tell you, is we think as Americans and policymakers that these were better than the indigenous ways, and they're not. And I think over time, finally, we have examples that saying, well, maybe we could start learning from indigenous people to fix some of our problems. Hopefully that's what we will do, because you can't put the toothpaste back in the bottle, but you can learn from the past. The other thing is this: the American family model was better than the Native family model. So what does that mean? So the Native family model is a clan system, right? That's an intricate way of marriage. We could only marry outside of our clan in this area. And we had a different way of leadership. Again, like I said earlier, we were matriarchal. Women had way more power in the Native American community. We never had this problem of gender inequality as we have today. I don't think so. I mean, it could be wrong, but I doubt it. So, but a lot of this American family model is patriarchal, right? Male dominant. And it doesn't include a clan system outside of your own immediate family. So I believe the clan system was a better way to go, personally. I think us having, and frankly, we have a clan system still that I believe is better than people off the reservation. I have so many cousins and so many families. When someone dies or anything, it's like you have this massive influx of family, and we all take care of each other more, and the tribe takes care of each other. And so you have remnants of this family model, and basically it could be worked out to where we could all of us could benefit from these principles. So one of the things that they said, and Merle Gates says, that leaders and chiefs are selfish. So again, they're starting from Indians had no sense of family, right? So there you have to like these arguments, right? They only make sense. These are the arguments he made. If you start off with that you have the superior way, right? And this is what white supremacy means in general. People think it's some guy wearing a triangle hat, and like, no, this is what white supremacy looks like. It means you have the best everything, right? The best way to property, the best citizenship, on best family, best religion. You're a farmer. That's what white supremacy is. It's starting from the premise that because you're white and because you have all this stuff, right? You have technological advances. You have the industrial revolution, right? So you're like, I am the best, and I am the best at everything. So lo and behold, look at the California's burning, right? Who do you think had the better fire model? We never had fires like this. For example, the clan, the Shamul, took care of their particular clan territory, and you never had anything like this. So that's what's cool about living in 2020 is like, we can just sit back and say, dude, you're wrong, you know? So all these things are bullshit right here. The stuff that Merle Gates said, leaders and chiefs are selfish. At the death of a father, food is squandered in prolonged feasting with no regard for widow or children. And so first of all, I want to say, the first one is just bullshit. Leaders and chiefs are selfish. That you wouldn't be a leader or chief if you were selfish, right? You just wouldn't. That was not that I know of. You were a leader because you were unselfish. In fact, the Kwai Pai was the poorest person in a Kumeyaay village. Typically, that's what you would aspire to be. We have those folks like Leroy Elliott is a good example. Manzanita, he just passed. He would give everything away. He was the chairman of Manzanita. So we still have these really selfless leaders. You know, John Chrisman of the AHAS, very selfless. Whenever you call him, he's there. You know, and it's just like, so this stuff is just like, it's so stupid, it's funny. And the other thing about the second one, how we squander food when someone dies. Now, we have a Karuk ceremony, and the Karuk ceremony, I just want to explain this. I think I'll explain it more in this class. But we have a Karuk ceremony where I just had one for my dad, right? Where we spent money on my dad's funeral, on his Karuk ceremony. It's a year later, and it's just ridiculous, dude. You spent so much money. And that's how it's always been, and we're trying to bring that back. Our tribe is. So we're trying to resurrect some of these things. But what that is this. So the Karuk ceremony is our most important ceremony of all times, because that's the last time you'll see that loved one. That person will be with you for a whole year. And then at that last year, you're supposed to not say their name anymore. You're not supposed to have photographs. You're not supposed to talk about them. And you're supposed to send them off on their way. And it's a real expensive, elaborate funeral wake. You bird sing all night. But here's the thing. Here's what I wanted to say. I wish he was still alive, because I'd say it to his face, is this. We, as Native people, our ceremonies, they should be adopted by all people to some extent. And I don't mean our version of it. You can make your own version, because what happens is in the Western world, we hide from death. When someone dies, we can't wait to leave. We don't hang around the widows, right? Or it's just like we run and hide from death. And what this does, this is something I've noticed. Maybe your family's wrong, but I have a Japanese aunt, and they're more like us too. Is when you have this process, it heals you, right? And I've seen it with my mom and stuff. And she's English, right? And I told her that she made this big shrine of my stepdad for 3 years. So I'm like, Mom, you got to let it go, dude. Like, our people, they say you got to mourn and move on, and so you can live again, right? So I had this big speech with my mom, and she did it. And I felt like she was a new person the next week or month, and on and on. But what I'm trying to say is, there's more important things in life than money and than food. And that's when someone dies, there's nothing more important than moving on beyond that and living again. And whatever it takes to do that, you should do it, and you should spend it. And that's what our people, the reason why the Karuk ceremony went away is because it's too expensive. And as people got, older and assimilated, we stopped doing it, because it's like, dude, we were pretty poor first of all. And so, like, when I read that comment, I was like, dude, like, it just really, if only this person knew what we could have offered, right, as Indigenous people. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping we get from this class, is taking the good out of all of our civilizations and identifying the bad. And that's how you do the buffet, right, of all what we're all good at. So when I read this comment, I was just absolutely like, but I get pissed off all the time. I mean, I'm always getting pissed off when I read this stuff. So yeah, that's what I say down there. White civilization does not care to understand the mourning process of Indigenous people or their ceremonies. It's too bad, because they could learn about honoring their elders and how to mourn properly. So that's what I'm after, is an amalgamation of Indigenous life and modern life. Because in the end, I think, when they saw this, I'm sure this happened, right? Squandered and prolonged feasting with no regard to widow or children. They're probably like, dude, they don't have anything and they're going for it. It's like, well, at the end of the day, this is our most important ceremony, right? This is our Easter or whatever, our Christmas, where you can't miss Christmas, dude, And so, but I think it's interesting that our people, the most important ceremony is the anniversary of when someone dies. And it just shows you, to me, how spiritual, how just on point our religion was, and how because the whole point of religion to me is to live a good life and to heal, right? So if you think of it that way, and not the title, Christianity, religion, it's like, well, what's the point of the ceremony? What's the point of the religion? It was effective and it worked. And that is really, for natives, is all that mattered. We didn't get caught up in beliefs as much as we were about experiencing God and being effective. If it worked, we were good. We didn't fight someone else. If their ceremony was different and it worked, we're like, okay, that works for you. So what happened was the Karuk ceremony. Let me just show what I'm talking about. The Karuk ceremony was, let me show you. So this is and I'll talk about this later. I just think it's important right now. So this was our most important ceremony. Where's this cool little photo? When I talk about cultural appropriation, I'll talk about this. So I forgot my train of thought. But so this is basically our dolls, where we put the spirit would go inside the doll at the end of towards the end, and then you had to dance with it, and then you burned it. And we're going to cover a lot more of it, but this is our most important ceremony, and it's one of those things where a lot of folks could benefit from this type of just principles, really. So I want to ask about what do you think about what I said about those principles of starting the foundation of his argument, such as communal property or citizenship, on and on. Like the core of his paper, to me, what stood out to you as, I guess, worthy of comment? I get tired of talking here. Someone else talk for me.
Something that stuck out to me with the communal property was that it actually provides room for the thought of, okay, who comes after me? Let's take care of this. Let's keep in mind that I'm not the only one in the process of using this, where a lot of ownership of property is usually, dude, I own it, I can do what I want.
Yeah.
And it doesn't allow the room for, yes, but what you want is not forever. It's only as long as you live, which most Western thought ends in, well, after I die, I don't care, so they can deal with it.
Right.
Versus, okay, well, let's set it up so that it's better by the time I leave. And then,
yeah, well, have you heard of the principle of 7 generations?
No, I don't think I have.
Yeah, so a lot of Native people, you can call it a religion, a philosophy, is you always look 7 generations behind you and 7 generations in front of you. And every decision you make, you think about your 7 generations in front of you. And so, yeah, it's all like how far you're thinking, right, into the future, if your decision is a good one or not. And I think we're there anyways with global warming, right, and all these other things. But yeah, does anyone ever question these other things as unsustainable for 7 generations? And I think, to your point, communal property does, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, check it out. It's the 7 generations.
Yeah, it gives them some scope,
Yeah,
and,
well,
it makes sure you have a large enough picture to realize the effect you can have.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's a philosophy. It's a different way of thinking, and I think it helps to interject that just to make you think. You may come back to be like, private property is the way to be, but at least thought about it. You know what I mean? So that's what
Right.
I'm after. It's just to question your presupposed beliefs that you think are true. So that's the journey I've took, and I'm kind of ready to settle down, but I keep questioning everything. But so what do you think, Rune? Give it to me straight.
One thing from the reading that kind of stuck out was the fact that you try to force them into education, and I don't know, the reading was kind of confusing to me. It was kind of like, it was different from the other readings, I guess. But
That was Merle Gates. It was a speech.
yeah, I couldn't really understand it that well. I was like, I had to read it like twice. But I don't know, I didn't really get much out of it. But yeah, I'm just trying to listen to you guys so I can get more insight of what it was kind of about.
Yeah, well, that's good. I mean, you'll get it. But it's cool. Like, that was the primary document. You know what I mean? Like, too many times you're reading someone's interpretation. Oh, this is what he says. It's like, that was a primary document for history. So I think history at its best, you get the primary source, which is hard. It's harder to do, but to me, it's like, that's more real. Like, that's what happened. He stood in front of people and gave that speech, which affected policy, right? So these are words are powerful, and it's incredible to me. When I read that, I was, of course, I have all this base knowledge, but I was. Did anyone else have a hard time reading it? That's a good question. What about you, Jordan? Ian, anybody?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a hard time reading it, but there were a couple times where I was reading, I was like, I don't understand anything that I just read. So yeah, I'd like go back like a paragraph or two. But no, it was pretty interesting because it seems like in this reading and the Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, it seemed like they were just trying to like hegemonize the Indians into what the mixing pot of America is. And it's like they refuse to understand that Native Americans didn't want that. They didn't want to pick up this culture that has been coming across from the East. And it's pretty interesting that it's like they're just stubborn, or Americans are too stubborn to let it go. And then it goes back to the manifest destiny thing, I guess.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I mean, can you imagine if you're Native and then people are telling you to adopt their culture? And to me, I can't imagine it, to be honest. But yeah, you'll definitely check out the boarding school, Unspoken, definitely, because
Okay.
it's hard to imagine. And then what they did was they did the child removal, right? So one of the main ways of doing it was by separating the children. And if you want to destroy anything, you start with children, right? So if you want to destroy a language, if you want to destroy a people, an identity, you just rip the children out before they get taught, and then you teach them American ways. And that's what the boarding schools is. So the boarding schools were devastating. They worked. And that's what I basically went through with our people and discovered the boarding. Like, my grandfather was in a boarding school, for example, in St. Boniface. And man, he was a full-blown alcoholic. My grandfather was. And it just destroyed my family and our family, and almost killed me, when I was young. I was very destructive. And so, yeah, so to say the policy was successful, yes, but at what cost? I mean, you basically almost kill us, and that's what happened, and in essence, that's what they wanted, right? It's either assimilate or die. And so, I mean, this stuff sounds, to me, it sounds like probably, if you never heard it, you're like, dude, what country are you talking about, right? I mean, do you ever think of that? It sounds crazy, right?
That'd be an interesting survey to go up to random people and be like, explain all these things, and then be like, what country am I talking about?
Yeah.
And, just to hear their answer.
Totally. Like, I'm still shocked. I'm like, what? In my thesis, I was a little naive, my master's thesis, and I talked about how great this country was and blah, blah, blah. And now I would write a completely different conclusion paragraph. You bet your ass I would. But
I think you can do that before you have us read it. Or maybe that's the other class that's reading it. Somebody's reading it.
I'm not. Well, I'm on to other, right? That's old news. That's in the dustbin of history. But my new work, I guess my new project, I do a lot of writing history in it. And yeah, so I mean, my point is, you can go all through masters, your program, and still not know this stuff, because at the end of the day, it wasn't until I went to natives I got the real story. Because when you go to USD or all these other places, you're not going to get the real history, because you're not going to be taught by Indians, right? And white folks, even who know the truth, they don't want to lose their job. They don't want to lose anything. So that's what I noticed, that they'll hold their punches, right? The native professors I know teach, because they don't have any skin in the game. If you're a native and you come from this stuff, you can't hold your tongue, because it's like inside of you. You'd rather die than be silent. So there's a lot of reasons why we don't know this stuff. And it's like, it was, really, set me on a real different course after when I started teaching at the Kumeyaut College, and when I started interviewing elders and all this stuff. I'm like, holy crap. Like, I had no idea that boarding schools affected my family. I thought I was always talking about someone else. And so the local boarding school story has never been told. And so I definitely read that, watch that movie. We'll watch a little bit next week, probably not too much. And so, yeah, let me just do a couple more slides, and then I'll let everyone go. So, yes. So where are we? Okay. Yeah. We'll just end on this last two slides. And then we will finish next week. So please watch Unspoken. I'll say it one more time, maybe one after this. It's only an hour. So here's the moral of the story. What's the solution? Right? So, and a lot of these words, exactly what the Nazis said about the Jews, right? There was the Jewish problem and the final solution. And the final solution was putting them in gas chambers, by the way. That was the euphemism. So these words are to me, I put them, they're on purpose, because there's a lot of parallels between the Jews and the Indians. So there was a problem, there was a Jewish problem, there was an Indian problem, and there's a Jewish solution, a final solution, and an Indian solution. So what is the solution? I basically gave you the answer. Destroy the family model, right? So destroy the family, basically take model out. That was the main thing. And that's what they did. My family was destroyed on my native side. I probably only made it because my mom had somewhat of a normal family, to be honest. I don't know if I would have made it without my mom. I need to tell her that today. I'll give her a call. The other thing is no more land held in common. Right? So this whole property thing is, like I said in the beginning, it's everything. The family model, the property held in common. So you're basically destroying exactly what it means to be Native American at this point.
Right, because if the land's held in common, everyone has an interest in keeping it.
Yeah, and the family revolves around that structure, right? Yeah, so for me, my family revolves around private property. I got a house over here. My brother's got a house over there. If he loses his house, oh well, right? Sorry, bro. Yeah, you can live in my garage, but so the other thing that really bothered again, and I hope you caught it in the quiz, is that the government and General Sheridan is quoted, "Let's make them poor, let's kill all the buffalo, and let's make them vagabonds and beggars." And guess what? That's what we were. So Verona, my people, when I was a kid, we would get food, church groups, whatever, would come to Verona because we were so damn poor, right? So we were all rendered impoverished, and basically we needed to, we had, I think this is kind of loosely connected, but we always did this, right? We always did division of goods and rations per capita, but this whole last part is not correct. So without regard to services rendered. So this part is incorrect, because we, as tribes, you had to pull your weight or else you would be out. You couldn't just sit there and do nothing. You had to contribute to the tribe. So we did have you'd be ostracized, right? You couldn't just sit there. So a lot of this stuff gets confusing at times, and it's not really accurate. So, but this is what they wanted to end. So they wanted to end land held in common, the family model. They didn't want us to divide goods without regard to merit, which is partly incorrect. So what did they do? And here's the moral of the story. The Indian problem was created by the United States. That's the moral of the story. And what they did was, General Philip Sheridan, this was Custer's buddy, General George Custer, he is quoted and tasked with driving Plains Indians onto reservations, cheered their extermination, writing that the best strategy for dealing with the tribes was to make them poor by the destruction of their stock and then settling them onto allotted lands. So, and this is all the skulls, right, of the buffalo. So what we're going to get into more and more at times, and this is something I say I say a lot of things that are shocking to not just non-natives, but to natives all the time, because I'll be honest, I don't think natives are really honest with what we're faced with, and that reservations were created to fail, right? And that's why they're all failing except for gaming. So gaming was the only thing that ever worked. It's the only reason why I'm here, by the way. I couldn't afford the education I had if it wasn't for gaming. But reservations were on purpose designed to fail. They were on purpose designed to not bring in any income, to not really have development, to not have employment within an hour of drive, some of them longer. So living on a reservation is almost impossible to be. That's why I live in alcohol. To get a job and do all this other stuff and to succeed. The other thing is the BIA won't allow us. We have to ask the BIA if we could do something. And more importantly, you can't get capital on reservations because they can't repossess the property. So no one invests any money on reservations because they can't repossess the property. So there's so many instances where reservations are just there's no way they could be successful. There's no way you can have a solid economic base other than gaming. So it's truly tragic that it was designed by the government on purpose, and we're living hundreds of years later with these consequences. And it's unfortunate because and we'll talk about, when we talk about historical trauma, and we're going to come back to the Lakota at the end of this course, we're going to see what it's like to be on that reservation. It's the poorest reservation. It's the poorest place in the Western Hemisphere, second to Haiti, right? So if you've ever been to Haiti, which I have, it's a terrible thing to say that you're right behind Haiti and you're in the United States, right? So we have some of the poorest people right in our backyard. To be honest, they'd probably be better off living in Tijuana than Pine Ridge. So we're going to come back to Lakota. That's why I really want to focus on the Lakota and how it was designed to fail until gaming came along. So now we have gaming. It's like we finally have political power. We finally have a future. I can finally go to university. My nephew just left to UCLA today. because of gaming. And he couldn't afford that. So on and on. So it's like, there's so many things to talk about. And when you hear, I think when I hear these people talk about the reservation and how it was designed to fail, I'm like, man, Native people don't even know that, right? And they don't realize. I think some people do. There's a woke, crowd in our society as well. But for a large part, people don't realize, like, dude, and more importantly, reservations weren't designed to go away at one time. So it was assumed by 1920s, and this is an El Capitan book, Tanis Thorne said, that no reservations would be in San Diego County, none. So we were supposed to go away. We're designed to fail, on and on and on, right? So we're working with the cards stacked against us. So it's important to know where you stand and still be optimistic and work with those cards stacked against us. So that's what I always try to do. But first, I want to tell people what happened and why, the stakes that put us here. So then we can go from an educated standpoint. Because, and I'll just end on this. Let me give you an example. Manzanita. So I interviewed Angela Santos of Manzanita. It's a great interview. You would love it, Luis. But she's the chairwoman of Manzanita, right? And she can't get, pretty much 50% of the people in Manzanita live on unemployment, right? 50%. And the only money they get is from revenue sharing through the gaming casinos and probably that stamp program or the food stamp program and on and on. So they're living on welfare, right? And that's right here in our backyard. But this is what the government always wanted. And then what pisses us off, or me off, or a lot of people, is then they'll talk crap about us saying, oh, so-and-so failed. Look at them. They're dirty. They're lazy, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, but you try to live out in Manzanita where the only employment out there is a golden acorn, right, like Campo, or Alpine, or Descanso, the Descanso Junction. We drove by it on the way to Julian yesterday. There's a little cafe, or the Live Oak. I think it's called Live Oak. So you have no employment opportunity. Your housing, it's in the windiest part of the county, right? So they'll turn off their power all the time because of down power lines. The fire just the other day was Hapatul Valley. That's right by Manzanita. What happens? So they'll have a wind event. They'll turn off their power. They'll all go get groceries. Then they'll turn off their power for another 3 days, and all their groceries will spoil, right? So this is right in our backyard. Our people, and this is what's frustrating to me, is like our people don't know what the people at Manzanita are going through, Verona, because we got it good. So a lot of it is, to me, I'm trying to bring awareness to all of us, especially within the Kumeyaay Nation, of how shitty it is for these folks out there.
In regard, it's important to say simply, I don't know, it keeps changing. 12 or 13 Kumeyaay reservations, right? And how many of them have gaming? Verona, Sequan, Viejas, Campo. That it? And so that's why
San Pasqual is Kumeyaay. It's in Lasagna territory, but it's Kumeyaay.
So
I forgot what I always forget what their casinos called.
But fewer than half have casinos, and so many people think the Indians are wealthy now because they have casinos, but that's only the few reservations who have a casino.
Yeah, and I think, as folks who could do something to help a little bit, that's what I'm trying to do. Because we need to help these people. We need to help those tribes who are out there suffering, and it's really, when you watch these interviews, it's really emotional and sad, and they're just trying their best. My Aunt Booty, she's a chairwoman of La Posta. That's a really sad story too. Their casino went under. They owe the Yavapai Apache $30 million because they live in a place that casino was never going to succeed. So yeah, and these are all in my interviews. If you want to check them out, I could send you links. So those are two interviews that really drive home the point of how the government put us in this spot and then talks crap about us when we fail. So I mean, it's just like adding literally salt to the wound, right? And so you have Verona, which is, and Sequan, we're the outliers. We're not the norm, you know, and I thank God. So I'm trying to use my what God gave me to shine a light on some of this darkness. And there's a lot of darkness out there. So anyways, I can go on. You got to stop me. It's 3:02. Somehow I got to turn my brain off after this. So anyways.
I'm going to say one more thing, especially for Ruin, who said this article was hard to read.
Yeah.
I agree. But what I kept going back to is he wrote this paper in 1885, 2 years before the Dawes Act and allotment. So basically, he's a politician bullshitting and making things confusing, I think partly intentionally, to make a case for allotment, which still hadn't been approved.
Yeah, we'll definitely we're gonna kill the allotment act after the next class and boarding schools. But yeah, so yeah, he's trying to affect policy, and they're known to be master of rhetoric, right? So they purposely, like Louise said, they purposely try to like basically confuse you. So anyways, all right, that's our class today. Yeah, anything else before we go?
That last slide, what was that a mountain of?
Bison skulls.
Buffalo skulls.
Oh, I had a question about
Oh
that.
yeah, that was a mountain of bison, dude. So just Google extermination of the American bison, and you'll see a mountain of bison skulls. So they killed 60 million bison. It's like, if you love animals, you would, like I said, you would look at the Americans like the Nazis, dude. They exterminated an entire 60 million bison just to get rid of.
Do anything with the bison? Like,
no.
Like normal hunters will like use the bodies and every little piece.
No.
They do anything with
I
them?
read this article and I don't know if it was really like, I seen it on Twitter, so I don't know if it's like a good source or anything, but it said that the Americans killed the bisons because they didn't want them to have a form of economy.
Yeah.
And
Well, yeah, exactly. They took away their whole life, basically.
Yeah. And then when they killed those all off, they only left, I think, 27 of them. And then all the bisons now originate from those 27. I don't know if that's correct, but
Sounds
that's
right.
what I've seen from the reading, and that's crazy to me. I
Yeah.
can't believe that happened.
Well, like Teddy Roosevelt, I think, is FDR. They would just drive.
Teddy was a big hunter.
Yeah, but they would just.
Sorry, a bunch of times.
He would just kill him, you know. He's without even caring and just leave him dead on a train. I think there's a famous.
I know. Yeah, a lot of times they'd shoot him from trains and just see if they could pot shot.
Yeah, and they say they were like ducks in a barrel. They would just sit there, just by the millions. So it's, and I mean, again, we should know this stuff, right? Don't you think? Like seriously, like.
Yeah, that was a solid 2 pages in my history book.
Yeah.
Out of a 10-book set.
Yeah, it's terrible. But fabulous class. Thanks for your input. I hope everyone's doing okay. I know things are hard. If please don't get more than four assignments behind without contacting me with an extra credit or something, because after that you're probably not going to pass the course if you get like up to four-ish assignments behind. But
Did
so
you get my email about the extra credit thing?
Oh yeah, so just send me your extra credit and.
Because I emailed it to you in Canvas. I'm not sure if you got it or not though.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Like I don't really. I'd rather communicate through email than instead of Canvas, because I don't really.
So just email it again to your normal email.
Yeah, I don't want to I have like 5 email boxes already. Like I don't want another one. So yeah, if you can just email that via my school email, GCCD or ethanbenegas@gmail. And yeah, so if you're going to be more than 4 assignments behind, I'm going to probably, I think the last day to withdrawal is November 8th without an F. So I just wanted to send that verbally to let everyone know, because I don't want anyone to get an F, basically. So if you get more than 4 assignments behind, just hit me up, do an extra credit assignment, and then you'll be able to pass the course pretty easy, I think. So anyway.
Details on extra credit assignments, we should contact you.
So extra credit, yeah. So there's a bunch of ideas. you know, there is, I would do right now, the History Center's open on weekends. There's talks every once in a while. There is the Mission, I think would be cool. San Diego Mission, if you haven't been, would be cool. Just go check it out and write a paper. Or
what about those
like
interviews?
Oh, the interview? Yeah, you can do that.
The interviews
You can
you
do your extra
do?
credit on
Okay.
interview. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, and then, so you haven't gotten any of the emails I've sent through Canvas?
No.
Okay, I've been contacting you a lot. That's cool. Good to know. I'll shoot you an email through the GCC, and
Yeah.
I wanted to double check on the extra credit and there was a point of interest that came up that's actually part of the current political discussion. But it's mostly just your thoughts and ideas behind comparing some of the current teachings for kids in schools back to some like the victim mentality stuff that they're teaching right now, and how no matter what a kid does, they're probably the project is probably doomed to fail or whatever. They're doing some weird stuff right now. And then
curriculum is
compare that to some what they're teaching in the boarding schools.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, you can make up your own extra credit assignments, to be honest. Because we're in a weird COVID world. So if you got a cool idea, yeah, just hit me up. Hey, hey coach, I want to do this, blah, blah, and I'll steer you away or towards something. And then,
okay,
bam.
Cool.
So yeah, especially
sounds like I'll shoot you an email and ask for the links.
Yeah, if you're passionate about something, that's what's up for me. Because then I'd rather read something like you actually care about. So all right, everyone.
Cool. Thanks, Coach.
Let me know if you need my help.